Hello, my flock. Today, I figured it would be fun to compare fictional cults because I have free will and this is what I'm deciding to do with it effectively. Now, to rank these cults and decide which one is the best, I will be using 5 categories. The first 3 categories are out of 5, the second 2 are out of 3. So, the first one is comfort. And I feel like that's self-explanatory. It's the amount of personal comfort members of this cults have. The next one is personal freedoms, which is also self-explanatory. The next is your lifespan. So, I guess lifespan might not be the best word for it, but it's effectively how likely are you to die young? And how likely are you to die of old age, basically? How old is the average person when they die, effectively? And what do they die of? The next 2 will be out of 3, which is morality, which is pretty self-explanatory, and this third category that I call X Factor, which is if you're part of the average demographic of people who are in this cult, right, and you're not in the cult, you're just screwing around in this universe's outside world, how well off are you? What, is it better or worse? And that will be out of 3. So if it's worse, you get 1 point. If it's the same, you get 2. If you're better off, you get 3. Got it? Okay. Let's start off with the poison wings, because I feel like they're the best out of all of these. Now the poison wings are a tribe in Wings of Fire, and they are effectively like an army, but they're like also a cult because as a group, they sort of control the opinions of its members, and basically everything that this group does is for the long-term goal of defeating Queen Wasp, and also they control who you marry. So, it's a cult. Now, on terms of comfort, they seem to have pretty, alright nests, and, they seem to be alright in terms of comfort. They get their own food, and they have feasts, and they seem to have a lot of fun. So, I'm going to give them a 4 out of 5. Mostly because, the hives have sinks and stuff, and plumbing and stuff, so I really don't think that they're like a 5 out of 5. In the end, they're still living in the dragon equivalent of, the middle of nowhere with no, modern technology, but I do think that, especially compared to other cults that are in this video, they're doing alright, okay. They're fine in terms of comfort. And that is a 4 minimum, 4 maximum, just to keep note. Now, personal freedoms. Not everyone is forced to marry whoever Belladonna decides. So, I'm giving them a maximum of 4, a minimum of 1, because it's out of 5, so 0 is not an option. So in terms of freedom, they're also for lifespan, I do think that they're probably not doing the best. They're living in the poison jungle, which is, not the greatest place to be in terms of do you go out and get eaten by poisonous plants? Yes, you could. Okay, you could very well go out and get eaten by a poisonous plant. Or you could get sent out to go, burn a hive or something like that, and die from that. However, Sundu did note that the child mortality rates went way, way down after she started working on the main building that they're all living in. So, I'd give them a 4. I'll give them a 4. Okay. in terms of morality, I'd say they have a pretty just cause. That they don't, when they're trying to go about getting that cause, it's probably not the best. So I am giving them also a 4. Oh wait, no, this is out of 3, so I'll give them a 2. I'll give them a 2 for morality. And on X Factor, okay, so the average person in the Poisonwing tribe is a Leafwing. If you're not in the Poisonwing tribe, you are a Sapwing. And they seem to be better off. They seem to be a lot more well-adjusted than the Poisonwings, if I'm being fully honest, so I'm gonna give them a 1 on that. For those of you who have been up at home, that gives the Poisonwings a 12 to 15 out of 21, which is pretty good as far as these fictional cults go. Now, let's move on to the Horde, because I feel like, it's the Horde. Everyone knows the Horde. Everyone loves the Horde. The Horde is the bad guy army from She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. The ones that I will be judging on their cult status is going to be the remake that came out by Andy Stevenson. I've never seen the original. Never seen it. But anyways, so for the Horde, I think that its personal level of comfort is probably about a 2. Mostly because they seem to have, comfortable enough beds and a steady supply of food and, all of that. They have the basic necessities, which is keeping me from giving them a 1. They're still not doing that great. I would not want to sleep on that bed ever at all. But I also wouldn't want to live in any of these cults, so I'm not gonna make any of these points, better. But, yeah, I'll give them about a 2 for comfort. For personal freedoms in the Horde, I don't think they're forced to, marry anyone they want to, but it's still the army. You're effectively being raised in the army. So I'm also gonna be giving them a 2 as well, because, they can't really do anything. They're kinda, it's a cult. They don't have any freedoms. Okay. Not doing too well. Okay, Horde. The Horde is given a 2. Now, in terms of lifespan, I don't know this. We've never seen a Horde soldier die, explicitly. There are certain scenes in She-Ra where I'm just oh yeah, that Horde soldier is dead. Okay, if that happened to literally anybody who is not Catra, dead. Okay. Catra has 9 lives. We don't get any confirmation that these Horde soldiers died, because that would mean that our main character babies killed someone, and we can't have that. But, because this is a kid's show. However, we have never seen an old Horde soldier. I don't believe. We've seen Shadow Weaver and Hordak, and those are probably the oldest members of the Horde. So I feel like it can reasonably be inferred that they're having a pretty high mortality rate. So I'm gonna give them, a minimum of 2, a maximum of 4 for that. Just because we don't really know. And, as for morality, I'm giving them a 2. Or a 1. I'm giving them a 1. 2 would mean that they're mediocre. I'm giving them a 1, because they're bad. They're evil. The evil Horde. And as for X Factor, I'm giving them a 1 as well. Because the only place that is worse than the Horde is the Crimson Waste. And even then, the Crimson Waste is not that bad compared to the Horde. There's no reason why anyone in this universe would want to live in the Horde unless they're, homeless and brainwashed, okay? Genuinely, and if I was homeless in the She-Ra universe, My ass would be taking the Whispering Woods before I'm joining the Horde. I would not do well in the army. I cry if someone's yelling at me. But yeah. So, for those of you keeping track at home, that means that the Horde has a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 12 out of 21. The Horde is not doing that great. Now, if you don't know this next one, just skip to the timestamp on screen, because after this we will be doing the cult from Cult of the Lamb. But the next cult that we will be discussing is the University of Oxford Scion, which is from the Bone Season universe. Basically, it's a cult for clairvoyance. I'm not really gonna explain it in too much depth, but basically it's run by these people that are effectively vampires, but they feed off of aura instead of blood, and they need a steady supply of clairvoyance to keep from going into latency, which, you know, sucks for them. Now, in terms of comfort, this probably varies potentially the most out of any of the other cults, because I'm giving them a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 4, because genuinely, okay, so if you do well, you are effectively, you're still a soldier, and you're still not doing that great, but if you do horrible, you're effectively homeless, okay, and that's not great either. That's bad. You don't want to be homeless, okay? You don't want to, like, you perform for scraps, and that's bad, okay? You don't wanna. So I'm giving them a range from 1 to 4. In terms of personal freedom, I'm giving them 1. If I could give them 0, I would, because, like, what the hell? Like, they can't do, there's literally nothing you can do about being in Oxford. You can't even leave. You didn't even decide to come here. Like, they just kidnap people and take them to the cult, effectively. Yeah, in terms of lifespan and, like, general mortality rates, I'm also going to give them a 1, because they spend all of their time fighting, like, okay, if you do well, you get to fight the Amim for food, basically, and the Amim are these giant, huge, creepy things that will eat your soul, effectively. And kill you. And if you're doing bad, and that'll kill you if you do well. And if you're doing bad, you will die of freezing to death, because apparently Britain is super cold and awful. Can't relate. Anyways, I live in Alabama. The summer, actually, I hear Britain is doing, like, really bad, like they're having a really hot summer. It was 100 degrees today. Fahrenheit, and the humidity is always 100%. So not to compare or anything, but, like, we're not doing too hot either. We are doing that hot, actually. Wait, side note. aside. Yeah, no, they're not doing that well. Okay, mortality rate 1. I would give them 0 if I could. Okay, they're not doing that well. In terms of morality, is this cult moral? No, it is not. They tried to get Paige, our main character, they tried to get our main character to kill, like, a 15-year-old boy. Just because. Like, it's not that great. Also, it's dedicated to, like, doing some horrible governmental shit too. Like, it's just not that great. So, in terms of X Factor, you would really think that living in that cult would be better than the outside world. I mean, how bad could it be for clairvoyance outside of this cult? Like, surely it must be better. Wrong. You thought wrong. Okay, so basically in the Bone Season universe, the government is secretly controlled by these by, you know, those zombies, or not zombies, vampires that feed off of aura, is controlled by those guys. And they spend all their time making things horrible for voyants, because hatred of clairvoyance, like, makes humans very easy to control. Okay, Nashira said it herself, humans have this mechanism inside called hatred, and it can be activated with a pull of a string, and Nashira sure enough activated the hatred of voyants in these frickin' humans, because, like, if you're a voyant, you have two options. You can turn yourself in and become a police officer and effectively, like, find other voyants and catch them, and they're gonna die. And when you turn 30, you're also gonna die. Congratulations. Or you can join the Mafia, which also isn't that great. So life for voyants in the Bone Season universe, not that great either, which is why I'm giving them a 3 on the X Factor, okay? Because, like, what the hell? Listen, if I was in the University of Oxford, you know, I might just stay. Like, I don't want to leave, okay? And that is what makes Paige so noble, honestly. But, like, yeah, I do consider that kind of a cult, because they do brainwash people. So anyways, my yapping about the Bone Season universe aside, Oxford University gets a minimum of 7 out of 21, a maximum of 10 out of 21, and not doing so great at all. The clear loser out of all of these universes is Oxford. Now, moving on to Cult of the Lamb. Cult of the Lamb, the Cult in Cult of the Lamb. Now, because this is a video game, you are the player and you can decide how good this cult is. So there's gonna be a lot of variation. Our primary example of this, what's a comfort level? I give it about a 2 to 3. There's not as much variation, because, like, you're eating berries and meat, and, like, there's very limited food options. The food isn't that great, and you're living in tents. Or you can live in, like, a shared shelter. But, like, your comfort level isn't that great. Considering the technology at the time, you know, it's not that horrible. It's not like you're stuck being, it's not like, I'm sure if the lamb could decide to make things more comfortable, certain lambs probably would. But that's not the vibe, okay. But anyways, so it's not the most comfortable. I give it a 2 to 3. Freedom 0. You're 1. Freedom is a 1, okay. Like, either way, like, you do what the lamb says, okay. Like, that's your job. Your job is to do what the lamb says. You marry the lamb if you want to. You have children with who the lamb says, like, not the best. Not the best, I will admit. So, lifespan, I give it, like, a 2 to 5. Okay. So, in Cult of the Lamb, you can, like, sacrifice your followers and just, like, kill them. But followers do regularly and can regularly die of old age. And also, on my, I can't be super loud about this because I'm not supposed to have that game. I have a follower named Alucard who I'm married to, and I give him the bone necklace so that he lives forever. So, like, that's an option. I keep resurrecting him whenever he dies. But, like, you know, so you can get resurrected. Like, there's a possibility you will live as long as the lamb does, okay? Like, bro. So I'm giving it a 2 to 5. Purely just because, again, it's the player's decision, but, like, it's possible for you to effectively live forever if you're, like, just a random person in the Cult of the Lamb universe, okay? Now for morality, I'm gonna give it a 1 to 3, because again, the player decides the morality, so like, you know, it's that. And as for X Factor, I'm giving it a 2, because it's about the same as everything else. Woolhaven might have been good. I have not played Woolhaven, so I'm not sure. Yeah, anyways, so that gives the Cult of the Lamb universe a minimum of 8, a maximum of 16. Which means, so that means at bare minimum, assuming it's the worst it could possibly be, going from worst to best, Oxford, Cult of the Lamb, The Horde, Poisonwing Tribe. Now, for the maximum, it'd be Oxford, Horde, Poisonwing Tribe, Cult of the Lamb, which is the nuanced perspective that we all need. Oxford is the clear loser here, which I think is fair, but like, I'd still rather be in Oxford than a random clairvoyant out on the streets, if I'm being fully honest. So yeah, thank you for watching my silly video. Consider liking and subscribing. I want to get monetized. Bye.